So think about me, would you? Don't commit too soon. Let us all have a chance to breathe and get out. And you know what I really look forward to? Being out in your homes again. Letting you get to know me and see me. That's what it's really all about. It's why I love New Hampshire.
That was Governor John Kasich in New Hampshire last month. He is back with us now. Governor Kasich, you sure love New Hampshire. That was kind of interesting.
You know, it's 2 congressional districts. The people are great. Last time I was there, John, 16 years ago, I was trying to run for president. I was talking to a lady in the kitchen, and we were having a nice chat. And finally, she looked at her watch and said, hey, when do you think the candidate's going to get here? And well, it hasn't happened this time, though.
Yeah. Hopefully, you're a little more known this time. I want to get to that in a second, but first, we had this dramatic showdown in the Senate over the Patriot Act and the domestic surveillance program. So, my question to you is: do you stand with Rand Paul, who says the Patriot Act is unconstitutional violation of our civil liberties, or are you with those like Jeb Bush, who say this is an important tool in the war on terror?
Well, John, you know, there's a balance here. I'm very suspicious of anything that's big, whether it's government, business, it doesn't matter. And so I think there's a middle ground. I do think we have to gather intelligence. As the governor here, from time to time, I'll get a briefing on threats. So I know that intelligence is important, but I also think civil liberties are important. So I do think they ought to continue the program. But all that bulk data probably ought to be put in some sort of an organization, maybe some sort of quasi-government organization, and we ought to extend the power of the FISA court. That's the court that says if you're going to go and use this kind of surveillance, it has to be approved by somebody. And you know, when we talk about domestic surveillance, I think we've got to extend the power of that court. So to me, there has to be a review. Secondly, I don't like the government holding on to this data. This would be a case for Congress to actually shine and strike the proper balance between surveillance and the need for civil liberties. And I think that's the direction they ought to go.
But was it irresponsible of Republicans in Congress, I mean, Rand Paul leading the charge on this, not to allow this program as it is to be extended for even one day?
Well, look, I'm not going to get into, criticizing Rand. He feels strongly about this, and I appreciate what he's doing on that. But I think at the end of the day, John, at the end of the day, you have to have a little bit of compromise, and striking a balance here is critical because we got to know where the enemy is, particularly the lone wolf, and at the same time, we got to make sure that people's rights are not going to be violated in the United States of America. So there's a way to get this done, and it should be done.
All right, so I want to ask you about the other major story this week, which is the advances we saw ISIS make in Syria and Iraq. Right. What would President Kasich do to halt the advance of ISIS?
I said months ago that we ought to have a coalition of our Western partners and any of our allies in the Middle East to form a coalition to knock ISIS out. And if that includes American boots on the ground, so be it. But at the end of the day, you just can't let them continue to make all this progress. Look, 3 big problems. 1, we disbanded the Iraqi army, and we have nothing but chaos since we started. 2, we failed to arm the opposition in Syria to push Assad out, which would have been strategic because of the support for Iran and Russia in regard to Assad. Then we had a red line, and we ignored that, and now we find out that over in Syria, they're dropping chlorine bombs on people. So, it's been a feckless foreign policy. We're undermining our ally, the Israelis. Couldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he came to the United States. There is confusion. Can it be fixed? Absolutely. But I think the administration has missed it on many, many fronts.
Okay, so I want to get to 2016. We saw you in New Hampshire. As I understand it now, your wife and even your daughters are on board with the idea of a presidential run.
Oh, I didn't know you could talk to them. They didn't told me that you called.
This is what I've heard. So what, at this point, aside from the money question,
John.
Yeah, are you going to do
it? Well, look, I mean, we have metrics set internally. I'm very pleased with what we have seen over the course of the last month. I've been very pleased with what I found out on the ground in New Hampshire, South Carolina, Michigan. I'm in the process of accumulating resources. I hope people will help me if they like my unique voice in this whole thing. And we look at organization. And so within a period of time, I will make a decision. And if we meet our metrics, I'm going to move forward. And I have to tell you that I'm increasingly optimistic about all of this. And John, I'm the most experienced in the field with being an executive running a big state like Ohio, dealing with problems like Cleveland, at the same time being in Congress, balancing the budget. I was the chairman and also serving on the Defense Committee for 18 years. So I'm pretty qualified for this kind of a job.
But there's no question right now, if you got into this right now, you would be an underdog. I mean, right now, if you got in this race, you wouldn't even qualify to be on the debate stage in your own state, that first Fox debate.
Well, John, you know the way this system works. You know, you go to New Hampshire and you do well and you're on a rocket ship. I don't worry about process. What I'm concerned about is, can I win? And will I have the resources and the organization? And we're in the process of determining that. And let me tell you again that I'm very optimistic about where we're headed. And I don't worry about whether they know me in Oklahoma or somewhere right now. I love Oklahoma, but I love all the states. But at the end of the day, you know how the process works. It's the early primaries that matter, and that's why I'll be in people's homes in New Hampshire, I hope. They'll have me.
Let me ask you, over the weekend, we saw this article in the New York Times saying that the Hillary Clinton folks fear that Marco Rubio would be their toughest competition because it would represent a generational clash, the past and the future. You battled you were there in the 90s. If that's the case, don't you kind of represent the past here?
Well, John, you know, what we need for a president is somebody that has deep experience, both knowledge of foreign affairs and the ability to be an executive, you know, to have made decisions and to have a bottom line. I love Rubio, terrific guy. You know, they're all out there plugging away and they're all doing a good job. But at the end of the day, we need somebody who has deep experience, executive experience, who's made decisions where there is a bottom line, who has a deep knowledge of foreign affairs, because it's pretty clear that America's position in the world is being questioned, and it leaves us less secure at home. And I think that's what we need. And all this business about young or old. Remember Ronald Reagan? He was an older dude. You remember at the time?
I remember well.
And I think he did pretty well because he had the experience, and that's what really matters when you're talking about President of the United States.
Let me ask you, we're really out of time, but very quickly, you know, you're from Ohio. You won big there. If you're not the nominee, you're going to be looked at as a possible vice presidential candidate.
Forget it.
Would you do it?
Forget it.
No way?
Forget it,
no
John.
Way?
I don't play for second.
I'm going to save this tape, Governor Kasich, and we'll be back when it all happens. Thank you very much.
Don't count me out, John.
All right. All right.